Hi there, this is Mr. Alexander again. This is the third video of the Unit 4 test review, and we're picking up on question number 21, which is where we're going to jump in here, which says find the solutions for 9x squared minus 12x equals 5. This is a quadratic formula problem, and the first thing you ought to do is set this thing equal to 0. 9x squared minus 12x minus 5 equals 0. And then at this point we could say, all right, a equals 9, b equals negative 12, c equals negative 5. And we're just going to plug this directly into the quadratic formula. So we're going to get x equals negative b, which is positive 12, since it's already negative, positive 12 plus and minus the square root of b squared, so negative 12 squared is 144, minus 4 times a, which is 9, times c, which is negative 5. All divided by 2a, which is 18. Right here, underneath the square root, that's the discriminant. I'm going to work that out on the calculator real quick. So the square root of 144 minus 4 times 9 times negative 5. The square root of all that is just simply 18. Right? So that means I've got x equals 12 plus and minus 18 all divided by 18. Okay, well, 12 plus 18 is 30. And 30 over 18 is some sort of fraction. 30 over 18, math, enter, enter, is 5 over 3. So one of the two solutions is 5 over 3. And the other one is going to be 12 minus 18 divided by 18, which is negative 1 over 3. So the two solutions are 5 over 3 and negative 1 over 3. Alternatively, you could have chosen to factor this problem, and you would have gotten the same set of solutions, but this would be one of those tougher factoring problems, so I actually think quadratic formula is easier in this case. Moving on to 22, simplify 2 plus 2i times negative 2 minus 6i. So this is a multiplication problem, and I like to FOIL, so I'm going to do 2 times negative 2, it's negative 4, and then I'm going to do 2i times negative 6i, it's negative 12i squared, and I'm going to do 2 times negative 6i is negative 12i, and then 2i times negative 2 is negative 4i. All right, we're going to combine like terms. We're going to get negative 4. I squared simply equals negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 12 is positive 12. And the negative 12i minus 4i is negative 16, negative 16i. And then we're going to want to combine the like terms here. Negative 4 plus 12 is 8 minus 16i. Now remember, it's good etiquette to write the real number first and the imaginary number second. So I've written it in the correct order there. Moving on to 23. Simplify negative 2i times 3i. Well, negative 2 times 3 is negative 6, and I times I is I squared. I squared equals negative 1, so this thing simply equals 6. Like that. Moving on to 24. Simplify I to the 47th. So the way I like to think about these problems is I like to think about it in terms of 4. I always ask myself the question, this exponent 47, what's the multiple of 4 that occurs right before 47? 4, 8, 12, 16, we get up to 40, 44. So I'm going to rewrite this as I to the 44th plus 3, like that. And the reason I'm going to do that is so I can rewrite this as I to the 44th times I to the 3rd. Remember that addition up in the exponent is the same as multiplication down here. on the ground level. I to the 44th is simply I to the 4th raised to the 11th power times I to the 3rd. Well, hopefully you remember that I to the 4th is just 1. So 1 to the 11th power is 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. That just equals 1. And I to the 3rd, well, that just equals negative I. So the question is, what's 1 times negative I? Well, that's just negative I, which is the answer here. So when you're dealing with these problems, think about it in terms of multiples of 4, and what's the remainder? And it's the remainder that's actually interesting. It's the remainder that's going to tell us what the answer is. Let's move on to 25. And here we're simplifying 4i in parentheses squared. So if we square the 4, that's 16. If we square the I, that's I squared. I squared equals negative 1. So this all just equals negative 16. Negative 16 is the answer. Okay. Next, we're going to want to simplify the square root of negative 32. 32 is 4 times 8, also 16 times 2. So think about it this way. Negative 32 equals 16 times 2 times negative 1. Well, the square root of 16 is simply 4. The square root of negative 1 is I. What's left over? That's square root of 2. So the square root of negative 32 reduces to, or simplifies to, 4i root 2. All right, let's do some factoring. 10g squared minus 18g minus 4. This looks like the kind of problem where we need to do a times c and b. My a is 10, my c is negative 4. 8 times c is negative 40. And my b is negative 18. So what I'm thinking is I need to find two numbers that multiply to negative 40 but add to positive 18. And so those two numbers then that multiply to negative 40 but add to negative 18 are 2 and negative 20. So when I factor this thing, my factors are going to be this x plus 2 and x minus 20. But then I've got this 10 in the front there, which means I need to write a 10 there, and there, and there. So when you simplify this thing, you're going to be left with x plus 1/5 and x minus 2. This is the factored form of x. Oh, these are g's, so these should be g's in here as well. My mistake. I used the wrong variable. So it's actually 10 times g plus 1/5 times g minus 2. I apologize for that. I wrote in pen, so it's going to be hard to fix. Next one. K squared plus 8kf minus 20f squared. I want you to ignore the f's for a moment. And just imagine this was k squared plus 8k minus 20. That's how I want you to approach this problem, because we're really looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 20 but add to 8. So we're thinking of multiples of negative 20 that add to 8. Not multiples, but factors of negative 20 that add to 8. And to me, that would be 10 and negative 2. So we can write this thing out. Let's use k's. K plus 10 and k minus 2. Now the only thing we need to change to this logic to make it work here is we need to put a couple f's in the answer. to make it work out correctly. And that's it. It's k plus 10f times k minus 2f, which is the correct answer. All right? Number 29 is the last one that I'm going to do on this video. And it says simply to factor 9x squared minus 16. Now, all you're supposed to do is recognize this as the difference of two squares. The way I know that immediately is 9 is a perfect square, x squared is a perfect square, there's a minus sign, and 16 is a perfect square. Now, we had a problem that looked like this earlier, but there was a plus sign, so we couldn't do anything fancy with it. We had to use the quadratic formula. But here, since it's a minus, I can write it pretty simply. So I'm going to factor it. I'm going to put my two factors in there. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of 16 is 4. And since it's the difference of two squares, these factors are positive and negative. And that's it. That's how you do it. All right, I'm going to pick up on number 30 on the final video. So thanks for watching. We'll see you on the last video.